This is Maharaj Katvanga speaking. After he was told that he has one moment left to live, I was never attracted, even in my childhood, by insignificant things or irreligious principles. I did not find anything more substantial than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Report. Maharaj Katvanga provides a typical example of a Krishna conscious person. A Krishna conscious person does not see anything to be important but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nor does he accept anything within this material world as being unconnected to the Supreme Lord. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 8.274, Shavara Jakma Jangamade Nadeketara Murti Sarvachaya Nija Ishtadeva Shputi. The Mahabhagavatam, the advanced devotee, certainly sees everything, mobile and immobile, but he doesn't exactly see their forms. Rather, everyone he immediately sees manifests the form of the Supreme Lord. Although a devotee is within the material world, he has no connection with it. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhi. He accepts this material world in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee may be engaged in earning money, but he uses that money for propagating the Krishna consciousness movement by constructing large temples and establishing worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Katvanga Maharaj, therefore, was not a materialist. A materialist is always attached to wife, children, home, property, and many other things for sense gratification. But as stated above, Katvanga Maharaj was not attached to such things, nor could he think of anything existing without the purpose of the Supreme Lord. Ishvasyamidam sarvam. That's from Ishopanishad Mantra 1. Everything is related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, this consciousness is not for the ordinary person, but if one takes to the path of devotional service, as prescribed in the Nectar of Devotion, he can be trained in this consciousness to attain perfect understanding. For a Krishna conscious person, nothing is palatable without a relationship with Krishna. What a beautiful, straightforward Krishna conscious verse. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjala Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yenai Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master is opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him again and again. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. Before I begin, I beg your blessings so I can speak something beneficial for all of us, myself included, so I can speak in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, so I can speak something that is pleasing to the Lord and to the devotees. Okay, so just a quick recap. In this chapter, Shukadev Goswami, the narrator, who is speaking the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, the king, who has 7 days to live, Interestingly enough, Shukadev Goswami chooses to go through all these dynasties that ultimately led to Lord Krishna's appearance, Lord Ramachandra appearance in the next chapter coming up. So, he zooms in, Shukadev Goswami zooms in when he comes across a particularly outstanding, glorious personality like Maharaj Katvanga. Katvanga Maharaj was a great king, and he fought great battles. He fought on behalf of demigods, and he conquered on their behalf. He fought against the demons, and he was victorious. And after the battles were over, the demigods offered him a boon, and he chose to know when he was going to die. That's the question he asked in response to this, when they granted him a boon. And they told him, "You really want to know? You sure?" And he said, "Yes." And then the demigod said, "Actually, you only have a moment left to live." And Maharaj Katvanga decided to immediately surrender, to focus on Krishna, to surrender to Krishna. He put down his sword, he took off his armor, went back to earth and surrendered, thus utilizing perfectly the time that he had left in the material world. And this is a wonderful story. And Katvanga Maharaj, I have to share personally, he's one of my favorite characters in the Bhagavatam. And just before we came across this particular Leela, this particular story in the Bhagavatam, I was telling a bedtime story to Gaurangi. She's 7 years old, and we do these bedtime stories all the time. And she asked me a question. She said, "Daddy, have you run out of all the great kings?" I said, "No, I have one left. His name is Katvanga Maharaj. He's a very interesting character." And I told her the story of Katvanga Maharaj. And then a few days after that, here I am reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, reading the story of Katvanga Maharaj, discussing the story of Katvanga Maharaj with the devotees. So this is how Krishna consciousness works. It's a Krishna miracle. Answers come before you even ask the question. Everything falls into place. Everything, it becomes like a path as opposed to a bunch of random events in our life. Everything becomes connected. Everything starts making sense. As soon as we stay connected with the Srimad Bhagavatam, with Srila Prabhupada, with the sages, with the devotees, by discussing it together every morning. So, in this particular verse, where Katvanga Maharaj says how from his tender age of childhood, he was never attracted to insignificant things, to flickery material world, and to irreligious principles, adharmic principles, principles that are outside of our dharma. Irreligious, it may not be the best word, may not have the best connotation. It basically means, dharma means the quality, like Srila Prabhupada explains dharma using the example of water. He says, what's the dharma of water? What's the dharma of water? Can anybody say?
To be wet.
Yes. So the dharma of a soul, a living entity, is what?
Serve the Lord.
You have muted, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, let's take it one step deeper. Serve the Lord, that's definitely the right answer. But let's take it a little deeper. What's the dharma of a soul in this world? To love, yeah, very deep, very deep. But to serve whom? To serve whom? To serve the Lord. One step deeper, to serve. Hmm?
Love.
To serve love. A little more
To,
personal.
to love the Lord.
To love the Lord, and to serve whom? Starts with D. Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Yeah, very good answer, Athena. Not exactly the answer I'm looking for. So the Dharma,
Devotees?
devotees. Who said the devotees? Andrea said, yes. The Dharma of the soul is to serve the devotees. So Katvanga Maharaj, he was serving the devotees. He wasn't interested in embarrassing the material world and what it has to offer and all the temporary stuff that it has to offer. And he was a devotee from his childhood. And he said, I didn't find anything more substantial than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like we said, like we just said. So there's always two sides on the Bhakti path. We are staying away from the material world. We don't fall for it. And on the other hand, we proactively serving, developing our positive attraction to Krishna and to the devotional service. In this verse, I think I found it very interesting because in the course of our discussion, this question was asked: how is it that Katvanga Maharaj was able to make it back to Godhead on such a short notice? He only had one moment, and he was fighting all his life. He was a king, means the kingdom, wife, sometimes many wives, children, and so many duties in the world. He was fighting, he was promoting in his fighting to heavenly planets where everything is scaled up to a great extent. Yet, on a very brief notice, he was able to focus his existence on the Lord and make his existence perfect. So this, I think I found this verse as the answer to this question. It says, since his childhood, he was already a devotee. He was practicing devotional service from very young age. He was already a Bhagavatam, advanced devotee. He was very advanced. He saw the material world in connection to Krishna. And that's what enabled him to pass his final test. So when we read narrations like that, we should understand that those devotees, those characters aren't ordinary. Sometimes we may feel, yeah, that's not fair. He was enjoying, he was fighting, he was being victorious all throughout his life. He was a king, he had a kingdom and everything. And then all he did was just one last moment of his life, he surrendered and he became successful. We should understand that these personalities, they had already been practicing and they had been devotees, they had already been seeing everything in relationship to Krishna. Even though externally it may seem that they were heavily involved in the material world, the consciousness of such a devotee always remains focused on the Lord. And then Srila Prabhupada says that somebody who is heavily involved with the material world, who is, Srila Prabhupada uses the word intoxicated by the material world, trying to promote himself in the material world. Srila Prabhupada says it's a disqualification for devotional service because, there's these 4 principles of material advancement: high family parentage, high birth. Then second one is good wealth. Third one is higher education. And the fourth one is attractive bodily features. And it disqualifies one from devotional service Srila Prabhupada says, so to say, disqualifies, because nothing can disqualify us, really. And why is material advancement is a disqualification? Srila Prabhupada says, because someone who is chanting the holy name in great satisfaction, in great material satisfaction, great material comfort, cannot be sincere, Srila Prabhupada says. If everything is according to the way you want it to be, if everything is smooth, if everything is figured out in your life, if you don't have to do a thing. So, because sometimes we think like that. As soon as all my material difficulties are solved, then I'll be able to peacefully sit down and chant and glorify Krishna and serve the devotees and be nice to the devotees and be humble. As soon as I just take care of this, my own situation. So Srila Prabhupada says this is not sincere. One cannot be sincere if everything is taken care of in a situation. Whereas a devotee who is materially challenged, Srila Prabhupada says materially impoverished, and he said it shouldn't be viewed as disadvantage, Srila Prabhupada says, in terms of devotional service. Material difficulty shouldn't be viewed like that. And he said sometimes we see how devotees are struggling materially. Externally, it may appear as though they're suffering and going through some difficulties in life. Sometimes losing everything, not having enough to pay their bills. Sometimes we see that. And Srila Prabhupada says it's very good because it makes us sincere. It makes our plea to Krishna very sincere. It makes everything very real. And I remember one devotee was giving class, and he was talking about this brahmachari ashram, hasta ashram, and he said, when you give class and when you see a person who has responsibilities in the material world, who is engaged with the material world in terms of his service, his offering to the world, if someone has everything at stake, high stakes in life, in his Krishna conscious journey, for example, high bills to pay, taking care of the temple, or any other externally difficult challenge that is being undergone for the sake of Krishna consciousness, for the sake of devotional service. So these people are listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, and you can tell that it's like full contact battle for them. It's real for them. And on the other hand, you see the person who is not actively involved in the material world for the sake of Krishna consciousness. For them, it remains a theory. And they listen to it, hear it in a casual, relaxed way. Whereas a person who has responsibilities in this world for the sake of Krishna consciousness, they listen in with their full attention, very sincerely, because they practice it. It's real for them. They are surrendering to Krishna. They are trusting Krishna for real. They are, I don't want to use the word gamble, but they have everything at stake. Everything at stake. Their mortgage, their family, their work, their service, their reputation is at stake. So therefore, we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam and try to make sure it's real for us. It's not just a theory. And for that, we need active involvement in the material world. Look at Vanga Maharaj was fighting very heavily. Arjuna was fighting, getting his hands bloody, dirty. It's a dirty service that Krishna gave to Arjuna, to fight and kill. So, Srila Prabhupada, but at the same time, Srila Prabhupada says, one should reduce the fever of his material engagement, of the material involvement, which means which means the consciousness, the attitude. Not in the same in the way of one doesn't have to light any fire, light no fire, and walk away from the world in a secluded place and practice bhajan. Not in Kali Yuga, not everybody is qualified enough to do that. But the consciousness, the way we think of the objects of material energies that we have in our use. So that kind of fever has to be reduced, Srila Prabhupada says. So, yeah, does anybody have a question or comment at this point? We've discussed how material benediction is really a disqualification and how Katvanga Maharaj was able to surrender on a very short notice because he had been practicing bhakti. So those are the two points that I try to highlight. Okay. So I'll just keep going then. And feel free to chip in, feel free to comment anytime. So we talked about how Katvanga Maharaj had already been practicing devotional service in his childhood. Srila Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion that devotional service is a continual process from one's previous life. No one can take to devotional service unless he has had some previous connection with it. So again, this is an answer to the question, how come Maharaj Katvanga was successful in his surrender and a very good notice in his last moment? It says here that bhakti is something that the devotional service, bhakti yoga, no one can take to bhakti unless he has had some previous connection with it. For example, suppose in this life, I practice devotional service to some extent, Srila Prabhupada says. Even though it is not 100% perfectly performed, whatever I have done will not be lost. And in my next life, from the very point where I stop in this life, I shall begin again. In this way, there's always a continuity. But even there is no continuity, hear me out. Even if there's no continuity, if only by chance a person takes interest in a pure devotee's instruction, he can be accepted and can advance in devotional service. In other words, Srila Prabhupada says, if you don't have a connection with bhakti from your previous life, if you don't happen to be a Mahabhagavatam, like Katvanga Maharaj, you're still not disqualified. If you, by chance, take interest in devotional service, perform some devotional service, if a devotee comes in your life, and if you're willing to hear from them sincerely, submissively, in a humble way, then we can be accepted and can advance in devotional service. And in this way, devotional service is easier for us than for those who are simply accustomed, Srila Prabhupada says, to mental speculation and argumentative process. And we have this dichotomy here. On the one hand, in his purport, Srila Prabhupada says that a great devotee, Mahabhagavata, nothing is important to him in the material world. He sees nothing in the material world as of any importance other than the Lord. So this is how we should look at the material world. It's not that important. It's not that dramatic. It's not that dramatic. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, we have to zoom out. It's not that big of a deal. We tend to make big deal out of our situation, out of our story. You don't know my story. You don't know what I'm going through. It's not that big of a deal. But on the other hand, you know, nothing is unrelated to Krishna. Nothing is unrelated to Krishna. So we have nothing is important but Krishna. And on the other hand, we have everything is important because it's connected to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada didn't use the word paradox so much, but we have our own term for that. It's Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. We're simultaneously separate from the Lord and one with the Lord. So we can explain this dichotomy by using this principle, Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. Everything is related to Krishna. And at the same time, nothing in this material world is important. The material world is basically like a big dump. Everything is so fragile. This material body is so fragile. That's the embodiment of the material world, this very body that we have. It needs constant maintenance. We have to wash it all the time, clean it, we have to feed it, we have to put it to rest, and it can break easily. The mind is a big embarrassment. It comes up with so many crazy things. So, but at the same time, our body is a temple. We should keep it clean as a temple. And our mind can be our best friend if we engage in devotional service according to what Guru tells us to do, and according to our dharma, according to our qualities, so we can have the best outcome, so that our devotional service can bring the best outcome. We should engage our senses, our mind. So, and in this way, our body is a temple. So in the material sense, our body is an embarrassment. But as we read in this purport, nothing is unrelated to Krishna. So as something that is related to Krishna, our body is a temple. We should always keep these two things in mind. Material world is no big deal. It's all temporary. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to serve Krishna. We should be able to find gold even in the dump. Even among garbage, we have to be able to distill gold. It's like a swan. He can drink milk even if it's in the water. This is Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. It sounds contradictory, but it's not. We are one with the Lord and we're separate. An advanced devotee, he sees the material world. He sees the evil in the material world. He sees all the difficulties that the living entities are going through. But he goes deeper. Mahabhagavatam sees through all that. And what does the Mahabhagavatam person see there? In the difficulties that the people are going through? We just read that. Can anybody answer? What does an advanced devotee see when he looks at the objects of the material world?
Opportunities to serve the Lord.
Opportunities to serve very close, a little closer. He sees, starts with F. He sees the of the Lord.
Form of the Lord.
Form of the Lord, yes. He sees the form. So not only he sees an opportunity to serve, he sees the Lord. He sees the Lord. Krishna is working in everyone's life. We may not understand it. We may not know where in their on their path the person may be. But in Mahabhagavatam, when he sees anything in the material world, he sees the form of the Lord. And we should be like that. We should train ourselves to see Krishna in everyone's heart, to see an opportunity to serve. like in said, in every circumstance in this material world. That's what Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us. And the pastime we are reading is pretty straightforward. The person found out that he was going to die, and he surrendered. It's a very archetypical story for Srimad Bhagavatam. But sometimes Srimad Bhagavatam story aren't that straightforward. Sometimes they may be really, really far out. And somebody asked that, I think it was Gail, she asked the question, or Athena. She said, Parikshit Maharaj has only 7 days left to live, and all of a sudden he has to study all these dynasties. What's that for? How is it? Why does Shukadeva Goswami choose to narrate that particular pastime? Or we were reading about the person who would switch genders every month. How is that related to devotional service and surrender? And so we should see how. By the way, there is an answer to that. There's an answer. I looked that up. And, so sometimes when we see something that is not exactly related directly to Krishna, okay, let's put it this way. I'm going to ask that question to you. Why does Shukadeva Goswami, why does Krishna include far out pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Why does he do that? What do we know? Why are there so many far out stories in Srimad Bhagavatam?
I've heard that Shukadeva Goswami chose to speak the history of a lot of kings because Parikshit Maharaj was himself a king. So he was giving how various other kings did devotion service, or various other kings, what happened in their lives if they didn't do devotion service. Or it's not that cursing is something that happened only to him, how even great personalities had difficulties in their life. In that perspective also, he recounted like literally most of the pastimes are related to kings. And also he is now just like leaving his body, so he may think of his dynasty and all those things. So he is showing how you see it's all names ultimately, and only those who related to Krishna, who did devotion service, they actually remain eternally glorified. So you have an opportunity now to engage in devotional service. The rest does not matter. Like he's just trying to give him the understanding how other things are temporary. Now you have an opportunity to render devotion service. Just focus on that.
Yes, perfect. So much nectar you churned out of that. Does anybody else want to share their understanding?
Yes, I want to try. And I mean, what comes to my mind, it's Angelica here.
Angelica.
It's like, why are there so many far out stories? And I think like what comes to my mind is that because this world is so far out, and like we can at least have a reflection of that which is not perverted. Like of course everything here in this material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, but to have a little bit of correlation. I mean, even thinking about the story of someone who was changing genders all the time, and then to realize that actually there's a reflection here in this world, and then ultimately to still go beyond it and say, well, you are not the body, you are the servant, and you are to serve in whatever body or circumstance you are to be placed in. So for me, it's a little bit like a consolation that I can see like, wow, okay, there are many crazy things happening here. And at the same time, they are not much different, or they are not less catastrophic as Bhagavatam, as the Bhagavatam stories.
Very nice. You said the word correlate, so we can relate. Yeah, that's exactly the word I was looking for. In the but does anybody else want to say? Okay, yeah. So this is the answer I was looking for. I mean, the answers are perfect with Srimad Bhagavatam. From wherever you approach Krishna, it's all perfect. It's all correct. So when Lord Brahma was instructing Narada. He was going through all this incarnation, and the question was, why does the Lord come to this world? Why does he perform all these leelas that are in the Shastra? All these stories. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that certainly the Lord doesn't need to come here personally for such purposes, to diminish the burden of the material world, to kill the demons and all that. But he actually descends to exhibit his transcendental activities in order to encourage his pure devotees who want to enjoy their life by chanting the glories of the Lord. So the Lord comes and all these pastimes play out because the Lord wants to please his devotees. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:13-14, it is stated that the Mahatmas, great devotees of the Lord, take pleasure in chanting of the activities of the Lord. All Vedic literatures, including the far-out stories, are meant for turning one's attention towards the Lord and his transcendental activities. Thus, the activities of the Lord in his dealings with worldly people, with crazy people, with insane people, create subject matter for discussion by his pure devotees. So this far-out stuff is in the Bhagavatam because the Lord wanted to create subject matters for us to enjoy when we hear them, when we discuss them. So, okay, so I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover in this presentation. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Ananda Bihari, for keeping it interactive and also touching upon important themes. Request if devotees have any questions or comments, please feel free to share now. Like this one.
Okay, if not,
Bihari,
then I'll just go on. I'll just go on, Lord.
Yes, no. Yes,
or
no.
I can quiz you. What if I quiz you? If I ask questions to you? We were talking about hearing, how devotees take pleasure in hearing, and when we read in the scripture how the great devotees, what they speak about hearing, it's always very inspiring, and so it's always one thing. They show their extreme eagerness to hear about the Lord, to hear the pastimes of the Lord. And does anybody know what Prithu Maharaj asked Lord Vishnu for when Lord Vishnu appeared in his sacrifice, being pleased by his sacrifice and granted him a benediction? What did Prithu Maharaj ask? This relates to hearing.
I don't want liberation, but millions of years to hear more and more connect about you.
Yeah, perfect. He asked for 1,000 of years. And I found it, wow, if I was granted the benediction, I would, I don't know, it's just another example of far out stuff in the Bhagavatam. A person, the king, is asking for 1,000 years. I immediately pictured this creature with many, many years. This is how crazy my mind is. But the point is, devotees are very eager to hear. That's one of the foremost qualities of the devotees, this eagerness to hear about the Lord. This is how we know if we're making advancement in Krishna consciousness. We're eager to hear. So if we're ready to ask for 1,000 years, then we're making advancement in Krishna consciousness. And so as our eagerness to hear about Krishna grows, our eagerness to hear about worldly matters simultaneously goes down. We always have to keep this two in mind. We should reduce the fever of our material consciousness and increase the eagerness to hear about Krishna. And Krishna has been supplying unlimited pastimes, unlimited far out stuff. They're so much more exciting and far out that the worldly stories, all these Hollywood stories and all that. So even in the material sense, in this entertainment sense, Krishna consciousness is by a long shot far more engaging and satisfying to the mind than this empty, flickering, feverish material world. What they have to offer, entertainment, what they have to offer. And Krishna is working in our life. And as soon as we detour a little bit, Krishna will make sure to show us that we are taking the wrong exit, that we're detouring. We'll share a little story, a little Krishna miracle story that happened to me a few days ago. I was sitting I was talking to somebody, and we were gossiping. Nothing super gross and offensive, but petty gossiping was going on, and I was engaged in that. And we were talking about something that was done by a devotee. And as soon as I drifted into this mentality of discussing the devotees, a giant fly that you landed on me immediately. And I immediately understood that this fly was sent by Krishna to show me that this is a stinky thinking, stinky talking, that I'm being a pile of garbage. And of course, this poop fly immediately lands on me to show me how rubbish my consciousness is. So this is how Krishna is working in our life. As soon as he starts, as soon as he's there, as soon as you show some interest in devotional service, in serving the devotees, Krishna will be there for you in case you detour, in case you get distracted. Does anybody have a story how Krishna, have anything to share from their life, how Krishna straightened them out, put them back on the path when they detoured? It's always very inspiring to hear other devotees' experiences. Because I'm not alone in this stinky thinking. I'm not the only one detouring. No? Nobody detoured.
I think
Right.
I'm yet to experience Krishna bringing back from the detour.
You have an experience you want to share, Krishna?
No, I'm saying I'm yet to be back from the detour. I'm still on the detour, I think.
Oh, you are on the detour. Yeah. Krishna is there for us. When this difficult moment comes, Krishna will be there for us. Krishna will bail us out. I can attest to that personal experience. The more I surrender, the more I trust Krishna, it always plays out nicely. Always bails me out. Okay, so I guess we can conclude here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thanks everyone for coming on.
Ananda Bihari Prabhu Ki Jai. Thank you so much, Prabhu. You always inspire us with your sincerity in devotional service and also your dedication in serving Srila Prabhupada in this moment. Thank you very much for your continued example and your exemplary sincerity in practicing the Krishna consciousness. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.